I'm not going to introduce today's speaker. I'm going to introduce the person who's going to introduce today's speaker. So I'd like you all to please welcome our representative in the state legislature from Fairview, Utah, Representative Spencer Cox.
Beyond here, there we go. Snow College. It's great to be here. I am a graduate of Snow College, one of the best places on earth. And it's so exciting to see a new class here. Welcome back to those of you who are coming back for your second year, or third, or fourth, or fifth. Hopefully there aren't too many of you still out there. We're really excited to be here today. Now, I'm excited. Maybe I'm just turning this on and off. It says it's on. Seems like we have a, now I'm back, turn on. Okay, let's try that one. We're working through the technical difficulties already. So it's great to be back on campus. As was mentioned, I am the representative, House of Representatives from Sanpete County and Juab County. How many of you here are from Sanpete or Juab counties? Raise your hand. All right, I like that. I like that. How many of you, be honest, knew that I was your state representative? No, you don't have to raise your hand. A couple of you did. All right, that's great. The thing I like about you being here is we're here to learn, okay? And there are so many of your peers out there that don't care about learning. They don't care about education. And even if you're here for the wrong reason and you maybe don't care about education that much, you will, okay? Now, people your age are out twerking, I don't know. Trying to figure out what rhymes with hug me. I don't know, okay? But that's what's happening. We're raising too many dummies in this country. Too many people that don't know enough about things that matter, okay? So that's why on the front of CNN today, we find out, this week, we're more worried about Miley Cyrus than we are about a war that's happening in Syria that may soon involve us, right? And you're here at Snow College because you do care, because you want to learn, because you're different. And, I know education is expensive, and some of you are paying your own way to get through college. And I'd like to ask this question. Who's paying for your schooling? And inevitably you'll say me, or my mom or dad, or I have a scholarship or whatever. But what you might not know is that the Utah taxpayers are paying for your schooling. They're paying for half your schooling. And that matters for a couple of reasons. It matters because somewhere along the line, we've decided as a society that it's so important for you to get a college degree that we're willing to pay the cost of that, at least a chunk of that, so that you can get through. So you can become beneficial members of the society, and you can get real jobs, and you can make a living, and you can make a difference. And that's what we're hoping for. That's why as taxpayers we'll continue to pay the way so that you can make it through college. Now the other thing that's important about that is we look at these big issues that happen around the world, in our nation's capital, and sometimes we forget that the Utah legislature, we only meet for 45 days, and actually if you take out weekends, it's about 30 days every year. We pass twice as many laws as are passed in D.C. And those laws impact you directly. I actually sit on the Higher Ed Appropriations Committee, which means that all of that money that comes from the state taxpayers to help build buildings and to help to make Snow College happen, we have to approve that. So the things that we do actually matter. What's interesting is when I ask the question, how many of you know who your state representative is? Many people, and not just students, don't know who that is. If I were to ask you who the Speaker of the House of Representatives is, you may not know. In fact, in a recent survey, only about 40%, it was actually 38% of the survey respondents in the state of Utah, given a list of names, a few names, could actually pick out who the president of the Utah Senate was and who the Speaker of the House was. So today you're learning something. Today you've learned that I'm the representative for Sanpete County, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce today the person you came to hear, which is the Speaker of the Utah House, Rebecca Lockhart. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple things about Speaker Lockhart before she takes the stage, and I hope you'll forgive me for a couple of these. But she's a historic figure. She is the first female to be the Speaker of the House in the state of Utah. That's a really big deal. She's an icon for female leadership in this state. She has been in the House of Representatives for 15 years, which is the second longest serving member in the House right now. She has a tremendous amount of knowledge. But something that's more important, those are things that you can read on Wikipedia about her. But what you may not know is she has a different leadership style than anybody I've ever met in leadership, especially in the House of Representatives. She's decided that she's not going to tell the rest of us what we have to do. Now, there are lots of ways in which she can determine which laws get passed, and she can kind of put her thumb down on who gets to speak and who doesn't. She's decided that's not the way she's going to run things. She's decided that a freshman representative from Fairview, Utah should have every bit as much of an opportunity to speak as a person who's been in the legislature for 12 years from Salt Lake City. And she's given me that opportunity to pass laws just like anybody else, and that's very distinct. But what I like most about Becky is that she's, I can call her Becky, the speaker, Madam Speaker, is that she's a real person. And she cares about real people. And I've seen that on a daily basis. One of my favorite stories is I was in the mall around Christmas, and I hate the mall, especially around Christmas. And I'm walking down, and I see this mom arguing with her teenage son, and it's a very animated argument. And I think, oh, boy, I've been there before. And I walk by, and it was the speaker. And I just had to smile. I said, you know what? She's a real person. She has kids. She has a family. And she cares about Utah as much as anybody I've ever met. And the fact that she's here today is very remarkable. I don't know that we've ever had an opportunity where we've had a Speaker of the House who is actually traveling to every corner of Utah this summer to meet with constituents, to meet with real people like you. Now, she's from Utah County. She has 3 children. She has a nursing degree, and is just very talented in all that she does. But it's not enough for her to just sit in her little circle surrounded by important people and feel important about things. She wants to come to rural Utah. She wants to come to Snow College. She wants to find out what matters to you so that when we go back in session this year, we'll be able to work on those issues that are important to you. So now I've talked way too much. I hope you'll help me in welcoming the Speaker of the House, Rebecca Lockhart.
Thank you, Spencer. Representative, I guess we have to be more formal. As you can tell, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold here today, so if you don't want to shake my hand, I understand. As a nurse, I understand that there's a lot of stuff on your hands you don't want to share with other people, right? So, excuse me, fighting a little bit of a cold. As Spencer mentioned, I am busy traveling around the state this summer and into the fall to try to get to visit with my colleagues in the House, but also with the public in general to try to get an idea of what are the issues that are important to you. You know, as representatives, we have an idea of what is important to the people that we represent, and we go to the Capitol and we make laws based on those things, but unless we're really talking directly to our constituents, we don't really know what's important to them unless they talk to us and we talk to them. So I know most of my colleagues have town hall meetings where they have that opportunity to talk to their constituents, but as the Speaker of the House, I not only represent my district, but in many ways represent the entire state, or at least have influence in terms of the agenda that moves forward at the state level. So I like to hear what's going on in all of the different districts. There are 75 members of the House, there's 75 districts, and there are 29 senators. So the 29 Senate districts. Now I'm going to kind of leave the Senate out of it. I have great colleagues in the Senate, they're great people, but I really care about the House. And so I'm going to talk a lot about what we do in the House. Each member of the House of Representatives serves on committees. We serve on standing committees and appropriations committees. So maybe I can start by asking a couple of questions. Does anyone know how big the state budget is? Like, how much money do we take from you and spend every year? Anybody have an idea? Just a guess. Come on. $1 billion. Close? Yeah.
36 million.
36 million. Anybody? Oh. Yes.
A lot.
A lot. Okay. it has a B on the end, it's billion, it's actually $13 billion approximately, okay? That the state of Utah takes from you as the people of Utah in taxes and then spends on government services. So what are the taxes that we take from you? Well, we take your income tax, right? If you have a job, you know, you look at your pay stub and there's taxes, right? And then in April, you not only file federal taxes, you file state taxes, the state income tax. Most people don't know that the entire pot of income tax, state income tax in the state of Utah, is constitutionally protected for education, okay? So the legislature can't spend the income tax on anything other than education. So we have the income tax, we have sales tax. Everyone pays sales tax, right? When you go to the store, you buy anything, you buy a car, okay? Sales tax. Sales tax goes to what we call the general fund, and it funds pretty much everything else in state government. Let's have some ideas of what, other than education, what state government funds. Yeah. Roads, transportation, very important. What else?
State parks?
State parks?
Yeah.
Yes, state parks, absolutely.
Like police?
Yes, public safety, not your local police and your sheriffs. Those are funded mostly out of property taxes at your city and your county, but the highway patrol, right? Public safety, so all of the highway patrol and driver's license, that's all public safety, right? So we do those kinds of things. Anybody else? Firefighters, yeah, we have a lot of that is county and local. We have some state, we have a division of forestry and wildlife, so we do natural resources as well. Mr. Blackham, former senator, now commissioner of agriculture, who hails from Moroni. Right? I've served with Leonard for many years in the legislature before he left, and now heads up the agriculture in the state. So we spend money in that area as well. Anybody else? What's left? Yeah? How about healthcare? Right? Health and Human Services. Right? So child protective services. Right? That's a human services thing. Services for people with disabilities. The kinds of programs we provide there, and Medicaid. Have you heard of Medicaid before? Okay, Medicaid, that is a state-federal partnership program, and the state has a significant portion of your tax dollars that go into that program as well. So you can see that there's a lot of things that we do in the legislature that affect your daily life. Those are the kinds of decisions that we make during these 30 working days every year, is where to spend your hard-earned money that comes to the government in taxes. When I talk to small children about this issue, I ask them, where do you think the money comes from that the government spends? I get a lot of, I don't know. And I try to tell them that, money doesn't grow on a tree, like there's not a money tree in back of the Capitol, right? And the state of Utah cannot print money. Many of you know that the federal government, right, they can print money. But the state government, we don't print money. We don't just come up with money. The only money that we have to spend is the money that we take from you in taxes, okay? Does anyone believe that they willingly pay taxes? Do you willingly pay taxes? Are you happy to pay your taxes? You're willing. Okay, you're willing, right? Because what happens to you, especially with your income tax, if you don't pay your income tax, what happens? We can put you in jail, right? Okay, so I'm not sure that that's willing or that's, you're happy to do it, but you're at least willing to do it, right? I like that. Thank you for that comment. So government only gets money for these services by taking it from the people in taxation. So what we have to do is be very careful about the level of taxation that we impose upon the people, right? It's not too burdensome, but also that it's enough that we can provide the services that the people expect as a society. Things like roads, things like parks, things like healthcare, those kinds of things that we deal with at the state level. So we always have more and more people coming to us asking us to fund more things. And that takes more money. And so we have to balance the need for more things with taxing the people. So that's one of the big things that we talk about on a regular basis is the amount of taxes that we are requiring the people of Utah to pay for the services that the people believe are important. I'll tell you a little bit about my family's. Representative Cox mentioned I have a son. He is 17. He's a senior in high school this year. I also have two daughters who are 23 and 21. My oldest daughter went to BYU and graduated with a degree in political science. Any of you want to study political science? Good, because there's not a lot of jobs. It's a great degree, but there's not a lot of jobs out there. And when she graduated, my husband and I said, "You're not going to get a job, so move back home and think about grad school." She got a job. So she works for a U.S. senator now and does constituent work and has a great time doing that. We're very happy that she's doing that, but she's thinking about graduate school, getting her MBA. Our second child is also a daughter, and she is a junior at the University of Utah, which is very painful for us as a family because we are Cougars. And so I'll give you some history. My husband's grandparents met at BYU, his parents met at BYU. He and I met at BYU. My parents are both BYU grads. My sister is a BYU grad. Both my brother-in-laws are BYU grads. My first daughter obviously is. So we're a very blue family. This is a family thing. And when my second child said, "I need to go to the U," when we have family portraits now, she is off to the side. It's been a great school. I know most of you are going to think about when you're done here at Snow where you want to go. I just want to let you know that she has decided to be an engineer. She's studying chemical engineering, which is a tough degree, but the U has a great program, and that's where she belongs, and she loves it. It's a great school, and they have a great engineering program. So think about that for your future. Those are the jobs of the future, by the way. So I don't want to talk much more about me and who I am and all of that. You can read that on, as you said, on Wikipedia, or you can Google my name. Be very careful when you go. Never Google yourself. Just don't do it, because all kinds of things come up that you never knew about yourself. A lot of bad stuff, right? All these newspaper articles and things that you don't want to hear. So don't Google yourself. But if you want to Google me, just take it with a grain of salt. Understand that yes, I am a politician, and sometimes people don't say things that you want to hear about yourself or that kind of thing. But I've enjoyed being in the legislature. This, as was mentioned, this is my 15th year in the House. I have a great love for the legislature. I have a great love for government in general. Not a weird kind of I love government kind of thing, but the way that our founders set up this republic in terms of having 3 branches of government. I hope most of you learned this in high school, right? In civics and U.S. government class, but we have these 3 branches of government that balance and check each other. If you understand the federal system with the executive, which is the president, the legislative, Congress, and the judicial, the Supreme Courts, and the court system, you understand Utah. We are basically a mini system, just like the federal level. And the legislature is nigh to Congress, if you will, at the state level. So one of the great beauties of our system is these checks and balances, and the ability for regular people like me to be elected to office, to serve in the legislature, to help make policy for the state, and to get in those great battles with the other branches of government, right? These checks and balances. One of the things that I do as Speaker of the House is that I get to sit at the table, if you will, across from the governor with the president of the Senate. And we get to battle it out. It's a lot of fun. We have a great governor. We have a great president of the Senate. But we don't always agree, right? Isn't that part of what's supposed to happen? We're not supposed to agree all the time. So we get to sit at this table together during the legislative session and talk about the issues that are important. And if you remember, what is the check that the governor has on the legislature? Anybody? Come on. Starts with a V. Veto, right? Okay, so if we're talking about passing something and he's like, I don't like that. We said, we're going to pass it anyway. He says, well, I'm going to veto it. We said, right on, let's go. Right? Hey, I like that. Not because I disagree, not because I don't like the governor. He's from the same party I am. But sometimes as people and as bodies, we have disagreements about policy. And that's one of the great beauties of our system, is to have all the voices heard and to have these opportunities to have debates about the big issues of our time. So with that, I really want to know what you want to know about as students, and also I know there are people from the community who are here. Both Representative Cox and I will be glad to answer your questions. Some of the big issues that are going to be facing us, obviously, is funding for education in the next year, as well as some needs in transportation, and of course Medicaid and what many of you hear Obamacare. That's a federal law, but it affects the state very significantly. And so there'll be a lot of questions around health care in the state as well. So I'm going to come down off the stage. I like kind of being down here. So if there are questions, I know Abby here has a microphone if people want to ask a question, and we'll be glad to answer those.
Hello, I'd like to go back to your tax situation again. I used to live in a state where they gave senior citizens a break on taxes, because so many of us are on a fixed income, and yet the taxes keep going up and up and up. And the housing market, for example, recently has been in the slums. My house has depreciated a lot, but yet my taxes keep going up. I know that's not a state part of it. But is there any thought or consideration of Utah doing a tax break for senior citizens that are on a fixed income now? I know some of the seniors have enough money, but not a lot of them do not.
Sure. So let me address maybe the sales tax and gas tax, those taxes that it's very difficult, if not impossible, right, to give someone such as yourself a break, if you will, on that. I think what you're mostly talking about is property taxes, and most of the time, own your own house at that point, right? You're not making a house payment, you've lived in your house long enough, but your property taxes seem to be increasing. The state has very little authority, I guess we have all the authority because we give the authority to the local subdivisions to tax, but we don't impose property taxes. I'm going to let Representative Cox talks about this because he was a county commissioner, right? And you understand local taxes and property taxes in particular. And I believe we already have some ways that we can mitigate some of the taxes to people with fixed incomes, and he can talk about that.
Yes, so where's John? We have an actual county commissioner here. We should just punt again. No, I'm kidding, John. We're not going to put you that far on the spot. But that is correct. That's one of the interesting things about being a county commissioner. I was a mayor also, and in the towns there are taxes that are imposed at the city level, and it's interesting. As a legislative body, we've worked to put in some safeguards to check those increases. So there's something called a truth in taxation hearing. If a county or a city wants to raise your taxes, they have to have this hearing. And that's the part where all of you are supposed to show up and yell and call them bad names so that they won't raise your taxes, right? Well, it's interesting. For years and years, we've had these truth in taxation hearings, and many of them, one or two people show up. And then suddenly they see it on their bill and they have this new tax, and then everybody's upset, but it's too late. And so I always encourage people to get involved early and often when it comes to raising taxes. But back to the speaker's point, there are some programs in place at the county level, and if you haven't talked to the county treasurer, I would encourage you to do that. Depending on your level of income, there are tax breaks available for your property tax. There are other breaks that are available for your telephone service, and for your heating service during the winter. There are programs that help seniors on fixed incomes with those as well. So that's probably a little different than the state program that you're referring to, but those are things that are available. And I'm sure your county commissioner would love to talk to you afterwards.
Statewide, so you're aware, statewide average property taxes, about 50% of the property tax actually goes to your local school board, so your public schools. So I know along the Wasatch Front, one of the challenges with such growing schools that we have, the amount of growth that's happening along the Wasatch Front, is that people's property taxes are increasing on a yearly basis because of the impact on the public schools. And so the local school districts are increasing the taxes, and therefore that shows up on your income tax. I'm not as familiar with the school district here, but if there are needs at the local school district and your school board has authority to raise your taxes to a small amount, but sometimes it even goes to a vote of the people of whether or not to take out a bond, whether or not to increase property taxes. So that may be happening as well.
Yeah, and I can respond directly to that. In fact, Commissioner Cox did write a great article on this in the paper just recently, that here in Sanpete County, for instance, we have 2 school districts. Don't ask me why, we'll get to that another day. But our school districts are fairly high in their taxes imposed. South Sanpete is one of the highest in the area, and North Sanpete isn't far behind. There have been several new schools built, and again, many of those through bonding, did go to a vote of the people. And so, again, the 25% of the population that decided to show up and actually vote made that decision for all of us. And so, again, just another opportunity. And we can have the debate over whether that's a good place to be spending money or not. Many of us supported those bonds and felt that they were necessary. But I know it's frustrating for our county commissioners because people come in and complain about their taxes and they say, we've only raised taxes once in the last 20 years, which is true. But the school districts have raised taxes many times over that same period. And it shows up on your county bill, and so you just assume that the county is the one that's raising those taxes. So that's a great point. It was a really long answer to a short question.
Speaker Lockhart, are you running for governor?
We got one up there, sorry, and then we'll come back to you.
Go ahead.
Oh, Speaker Lockhart, are you running for governor?
No, not now. The gubernatorial race doesn't happen until 2016, no. I get that question a lot. I'm very focused right now on finishing up my last year and a half as Speaker of the House. As I mentioned, I have great love for the legislative branch of government. It is, I don't know, when I give my final speech, I'll probably be a ball baby talking about leaving the legislature and the great love that I have for the legislative process. But this is a question I get asked a lot, and to be honest with you, I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it quite seriously. But that's in the future. That's something that I might, think about more seriously in a year and a half. But as I said, I'm personal friends with our governor, Governor Herbert. He and I have known each other for 9 to 20 years, worked together on a lot of issues together, and so if and when I decide to run for governor, it's not a reflection per se on anything that our governor now is up to. It would be something that, as I said, I'll think about much more seriously in the next couple of years or so. But it's quite a compliment, and it's very flattering to have people ask that question. And so I'm an honest person, and I'll tell you, it has crossed my mind, and I'm thinking about it, but not ready to make a decision. So I'll do questions on this side. There's a gentleman right here.
Yes, I'm wondering if the state, okay, I got good boy. I'm concerned about Obamacare being implemented, and some states are rejecting it. I was wondering how the state of Utah stands, and if they can reject the whole program and not be taxed and be separate.
So I'm making sure that Representative Cox isn't on the right committee so I can pass this mic to him. He's not. So The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, as most people call it, even the president calls it that now, so you can say it without being derogatory. Obamacare has a couple of parts to it. One is the individual mandate, right? And this is what the states sued over. The states sued the federal government and said that that was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court came back and said, no, it's constitutional, and they can impose the individual mandate. The state of Utah is not required to enforce the individual mandate. The federal government will enforce that. So we are staying out of that. If anyone comes to your door or tries to make you purchase insurance or fines you on your income taxes, that will be the federal government. That will not be the state government, because the federal government will be enforcing that portion of the ACA. The other part has to do with Medicaid and Medicaid expansion. We as a state have not made the decision yet on the expansion of Medicaid. Congress left that up to the governors. The governors understand that Medicaid expansion involves money. And constitutionally, money and the control of the money is given to the legislative branch of government. So it's really a joint decision, and our governor has been very good to work with the legislature to understand that and say to us, you know, we have to make this decision together. The governor's busy. He has a lot of subcommittees out, working groups out, gathering the information to get to him so that he has all the pertinent and valuable information and necessary information to make the decision as to whether or not to expand Medicaid. But let me just tell you what's going to happen no matter what we decide to do. In the state of Utah, we have an established Medicaid program with certain eligibility. We also have about, well, in the tens of thousands of individuals in Utah right now who qualify for that program as it exists today, but who have not applied, who are not taking Medicaid. We don't know exactly why. I believe it's because we are a self-reliant people, and a lot of people would like to pay their own bills and not be on a government program. But we don't know the exact reason, but we know that there are tens of thousands of people in Utah who would qualify today. What we do know is when the individual mandate is imposed, many of those people will want to buy insurance. They will want to comply with the law. The first thing that will happen when they want to comply with the law is that they will be evaluated as to whether or not they qualify for Medicaid. And if they qualify for Medicaid, they will be on Medicaid. There will be no choice. So if you're one of those people who qualifies but doesn't want to be on it, or chooses to pay for your own insurance, at that point you will have no choice. You will be put on the Medicaid program. So what we anticipate as a state, whether we decide to increase the benefits or do the expansion under the Affordable Care Act or not, is that our Medicaid rolls will grow, because those tens of thousands of individuals will come onto the Medicaid rolls on the program as we have established it today. Our analysts tell us that is a cost to the Utah taxpayers of $1 billion over the next 10 years. And that's not us saying yes, that's just what's going to happen. If we decide to do the expansion that is with the Affordable Care Act, that's another almost $2 billion over the next 10 years. So you can see that's $100 to $300 million a year of revenue that we will have to fund the Medicaid program if we decide to move forward with expansion. If we don't do expansion, it's about $100 million a year. As I talked earlier, this is why I talked about this at the beginning. Where do we get the money? We can't print it, we can't grow it, right? So where do we get it? We raise your taxes, right? Because that's where we get it, or we cut something else, right? So these are the kinds of decisions that we're going to be faced with in the next few years. We didn't pass the Affordable Care Act, that was Congress. And I'll tell you, not one of our congressional delegation voted for it, but it got passed anyway. We actually were one of the states who sued the federal government over the constitutionality. We didn't win that case, but it is the law of the land. It is the federal law. We have decided so far as a state to separate ourselves from that and not become embroiled in it. But as I mentioned, there are certain parts of it that we will bear the cost of, no matter what our decision is, and that's the Medicaid portion. talk loud.
All right, I'll use my teacher voice. I do understand that money doesn't grow on trees. I understand that money doesn't grow on trees, but it seems that the proportion of the Utah State budget that's spent on higher education seems to keep decreasing. The president did a study a few years ago, correct me if I'm not wrong, President, that the faculty here would get a pay raise, at least most of them, if they were to switch out to the local school districts for their years of experience in education. Also, tuition seems to keep creeping up and up. What's the House's position on funding higher education?
I'm going to start with Representative Cox because he's on the subcommittee for higher education.
And what's the House's position or what's my position? Yeah. No, it is an issue, and we're seeing that percentage change for both higher ed and secondary education, both. And it's troubling to me to see that happen. One of the, we have a dual problem, you referred to that a little bit. Our costs keep going up, right? And education is getting more expensive. One of the reasons many of you are possibly here at Snow College is that it's still a pretty good deal when you look at it on paper. But that doesn't mean it's a great deal for the educators that are here. There we go. I'm back on. Sorry. It doesn't mean it's a great deal for the educators that are here. And all I'm doing is telling you what the problem is. We are working towards it. It's this constant battle. You know, we have these subcommittees, these appropriation subcommittees, and if you want to see a real fight, she talked about duking it out with the governor. The real fight happens when the chairs of all these committees get together with leadership and start battling over who gets what piece of the pie, because the pie is growing, but it's not growing very quickly. Costs are rising, so we're really fighting, and there's a tension over that. Now, I have to give credit. I honestly believe that in higher education, more so than anywhere else in state government, we have seen the leaders of our higher education institutions, and President White is absolutely included in that, who have come together with some very interesting ideas and solutions. They're willing to look outside the box and to do things a little differently. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince the rest of the legislature to show them, look, this works. When you give incentives in the right way, we can move more funding here and get better results. One of the problems we have, I'm a political science major, so I would like to thank the speaker for really cheapening my education with her previous comments. But the truth is, when I graduated, I was overly qualified to work at McDonald's, and that was about it. And so I ended up going to law school. So, two wrongs doesn't make a right, but at least I could get a job as an attorney when I got out of school. And what we're seeing in the state is we don't need more political science majors, right? What do we need? We don't need more lawyers. We absolutely don't need more lawyers. Okay, I heard STEM. What does STEM stand for? Does anybody know? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics, right? All four of those things involved math, which I was very bad at, which is why I went to law school. There's no math on the LSAT. I'll just give that away, which is the entrance exam. But so the problem is we have a pretty good, our unemployment number is really low in the state of Utah, but we have all these openings for engineers and for really, really bright, smart people who tried hard in school, and they can't get enough people to fill those. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, okay, when they fill those jobs, those are high-paying jobs, right? And if you've got a high-paying job, what are you going to pay more of? Taxes. And if we have more taxes, what can we do with that money? We can fund education and higher education, right? So we're trying to get the cart ahead of the horse in the appropriate manner, and if we can use financial incentives to give to Snow College, to give to their professors, to help give us more STEM students, and I like STEAM students, right? I think you should have a little art in there somewhere, okay? It's okay to be able to read books and enjoy literature and those types of things. But if we can do that, then we can continue to grow our economy. And the only way, again, with money not growing on trees, we really need to see a major expansion in our economy if we're going to find the funds necessary to do what we need to do. So, again, long answer, you asked me the time, I built you a clock. I'm fighting every day to get more money for higher education. I believe in it. I believe we need it. You deserve it because you are the ones that are going to help us educate the next generation. If we can't do this, and we have a goal in the state, right, that we want to increase the number of degrees, that we want, by the year 2020, that we want 66% of our population to have some sort of certificate or degree post-high school, because we believe that that's the workforce we need for the future. But if we don't fund it now, and if we don't fund it here, that's never going to happen, and we're just going to dig ourselves in a bigger hole.
Let me just talk a little bit about, at a 30,000-foot level in terms of philosophy and the function of the legislature. And this is the real work of the legislature, is the budget. I mean, we talk about all the laws that we pass, and generally, most of those laws we all agree on. I mean, we all agree that child abuse is wrong and you ought to go to jail. I mean, you know, those are really kind of more easy type things. It's the budget. It's the budget. And how much money, how much taxes have we collected? And then what are all the needs? And it's these subcommittees meeting, it's leadership meeting, it's sitting down with the executive branch, with the governor, and looking at all of the needs and prioritizing. You as families, you as individuals, you've got to look at what your budget is, right? I mean, you've got to say, this is how much money I have. And I've got to pay rent, and I've got to have food, and I've got, you know, all the necessary stuff. And then whatever's left, you spend to go to the movies or whatever, the fun stuff you get to do. It's the same thing that we have to do at the state level. We have to look at how much money do we have, what are the absolutely have-to-haves, and how do those balance out with other have-to-haves, right? And it's just the prioritization process. And that's why it's so important to have representative government. It's important to not have one person making those decisions. It's important to have 75 members of the House who all have things that they care about, things that they know about, expertise that they have to contribute to those discussions, so that when we make the prioritization, that it reflects what the majority of the people of Utah would like to see us spend the money on. But that really is the most difficult thing that we do, is make those decisions. And not everybody's happy all of the time. So, got a question here.
Yeah, has anyone in the legislature considered unicameral form of government like Nebraska has as a way of saving money?
I don't think that we've ever considered that in terms of a way of saving money. When you talk about a $13 billion budget, the legislature's budget is not that big. I mean, it's millions of dollars, yes, but in terms of savings to the state, if you wanted hundreds of millions of dollars, I'll just tell you that you're not going to necessarily, you could find savings if we did that, but it's not going to be a significant thing. So that you understand, the House of Representatives has 5 full-time staff people. 5. Now, we have nonpartisan staff that work for the House and the Senate. We have a lot of attorneys that work for us, and research people, we have auditors, and we have fiscal analysts. And that staff probably adds up to about 100 people total. But that's really the employees of the legislative branch of government for one of the 50 states. We are a small state. Nebraska is the only state that has a unicameral body. One of the things I like about having both a House and a Senate is that we check each other, right? Sometimes the House is, well, we're not perfect, but neither's the Senate. And sometimes one or each of us will pass something that the other says, that was not wise, and they don't pass. And that's probably a good thing, right? So not only do we have the governor or the executive branch that checks us in terms of vetoing legislation that is not good in the eyes of the executive branch, but we have the House and the Senate that check each other. And sometimes the House will want to pass something we think is really important, the Senate disagrees, and vice versa, and I think that's an important check. But in terms of the savings, you would probably save a few $1 million, but it would not be significant to the state.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to take 2 more questions, starting right here.
Thank you. I see Professor Wheeler is here. He is awesome. If you can take his class, you'll be a smarter person. My question is, detention centers and prisons have become the housing places for the mentally ill. Except for private residential, what can Utah do to get the mentally ill out of detention centers and prisons, so that's not their home, and so they can get the right treatment.
Thank you for asking that, because that's an issue that, as a nurse, I spent most of the first 10 years or so of my service in the legislature on those committees, the Health and Human Services committees, where we dealt with these kinds of issues. We do know that this is a problem. We know that there are people in prison and in the county jails who, that is not the best placement for them. They are mentally ill or have a brain injury of some kind, and need help in that respect, as well as the fact that they have committed a crime, and that's why they're in jail or in prison. So we understand that that's a problem. And you mentioned the community group homes, if you will, and the residential services that are out there. We don't have enough of them. Some of that is because the funding is low. We could and probably should do more in terms of reimbursements to companies and individuals who are willing to provide that service. Let me talk a little, I'll go to philosophy here a little bit too. There is a overriding philosophy right now in the human services arena, which is that no one who's mentally ill should be in a facility. Okay, so we have a state hospital, it's in Provo, it's actually in my district. But there is a philosophical and a federal philosophy that leans towards community placement, right? No one should be in an institution, right? You all seen those horror movies, right, where you have the state hospital or the mental hospital, right? This is what we envision, right? So it's very difficult, frankly, to have people in places like the state hospital. And that's probably appropriate in most cases. So what we need to do is look at ways that we can increase reimbursements and compensation for individuals and companies who are willing to provide that residential service. I'll give you an example of one of the issues we have. I mentioned people with brain injury. This is close to my district. We have a person who has a brain injury, and he just can't make the connection. It was a motorcycle accident. He can't make the connection between the things that he does and the consequences. It doesn't work anymore. And so he commits crimes because he doesn't understand this connection. And so he ends up in jail, which is not appropriate for him because he doesn't understand. He doesn't have that capability and he shouldn't be in a population with hardened criminals, if you will. So he ends up in jail. Now you could say, let's put him in the state hospital. Well, guess what? He has a brain injury. He's not mentally ill. He doesn't have a mental illness. So that can't happen. He's also not what we would term developmentally disabled. So there's not a facility for the developmentally disabled because that's not his problem either. His problem is a brain injury. So we've got to figure out for these individuals who we find a lot in the prison system or in the county jails, where is an appropriate placement for them, where they can be protected from themselves and frankly from the rest of us, right? Because there's where the crimes are happening, but where they can live and be happy and have a productive life. So thank you for bringing that up. That is actually something that we're working on in our Health and Human Services Committee, is those issues.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I think that's as far as we're going to go with tonight.
I think we have something pretty quick, but we'll be glad to stay here, and if anybody has some more questions, we'll be glad to answer those real quickly. But thank you for all coming. Appreciate it.